We want to now look at this question related to calculating nominal GDP, real GDP, and GDP deflator. So what we'll do is we will first summarize the data given to us in the form of a table to make it easier to understand it. So the data for 1995 and 1996 can be summarized in the following table. So let's first put the data nicely in a table so that becomes easier to do it. So here we can take 1995. So we'll have quantity here, and then we'll have price per unit in dollars. Then we'll have 1996 because we're looking at 2 years, and quantity here, and similarly price per unit. So we're told it's a 3-good economy, right? Where we start off with burgers. Then we have onion rings, and then we have milkshake. So the quantity for this is given to us as 1200, for this it's 5000, and for this 600. And the price per unit is $1 for this, $0.5 or 50 cents for this, and $2 for this. The quantity for this is 1300. This is given as 5500, and this is given as 700. And price per unit is $1.2. $0.62 is 60 cents, and $2.5. So this is just for summarizing the information given to us. Now let's start off by finding nominal GDP. So now we want to find nominal GDP first. And here we need to recall how do we calculate nominal GDP. So let's recall that nominal GDP is calculated as, so recall that nominal GDP is calculated as today's output measured at today's prices. So it's today's output measured at today's prices, right? So we can basically write that nominal GDP in year T is just the summation of the quantity of the quantity of each product in year T multiplied by its price. So what you do is you take the quantity of each product, you multiply it with its price, and you sum it up, right? That's how you calculate nominal GDP. It's today's output measured at today's prices. So this is what it is. Now let's look at how can we calculate it. So let's look at how can we calculate it now. So let's first calculate nominal GDP let's just calculate it over here. So we want to find nominal GDP for 1995. So if you want to find nominal GDP for 1995, so what we're going to do is we're going to take each product, take its quantity, multiply with its price, and sum them up because it's today's output measured at today's prices. So it's 1995's output measured at 1995 prices. That will give us nominal GDP for 1995. So we take the quantity of burgers in 1995, multiplied with the price of burgers in 1995. Similarly, we take the quantity of onion rings in 1995 multiplied with the price of onion rings in 1995. Similarly, we take the quantity of milkshakes in 1995 multiplied with the price of milkshakes in 1995. So then this we know over here, for instance, we can see if we just change this a bit, let's just look at this. So this is the quantity of burgers. This is the price of burgers, right? So it's 12 into 1. Similarly, this is 5000 into 0.5. This is 600 into 2. So this is how we can do this, right? So this is just simply quantity of burgers are 1200 times their price, which is 1. 1200 into 1, 1 plus the quantity of onion rings, which is 5,000 into 0.5, plus the quantity of milkshakes, which is 600, into the price of milkshake, which is $2. So this will give us a nominal GDP of 1995, which turns out to be $4,900, right? So this is how we can find the nominal GDP for 1995. Let's do it for 1996 now. I'm just delete all of this. So now let's find it for 1996. So now we want to find the nominal GDP for 1996. So nominal GDP for 1996. Again, it's going to be 1996 output measured in 1996 prices. But remember, it's today's output measured today's prices. Today, in this case, is on 1996. So we're going to look at so the items that now we want to look at are, so it's going to be this, right? So we're going to look at the quantity 1996, which is in this case 1300 times 102. Then it's going to be onion rings 5500 times 0.6. Then it's going to be 700 times 2.5. So now going back to this. So nominal GDP, let's just, okay, nominal GDP 1996 would then be the quantity in, quantity in 1996. So it's going to be the quantity of burgers in 1996 multiplied by the price of burgers in 1996 plus the quantity of onion rings in 1996 times the price of onion rings in 1996 plus the quantity of milkshakes in 1996 times the price of milkshakes in 1996. And because we just have a three good economy, we're going to stop here now. Right, so quantity of burgers in 1996 is 1300 times their price, which is $1.2, plus the quantity of onion rings is 5500 times the price, which is $0.6, plus the quantity of milkshakes is 700 times their price, which is $2.5. So this will turn out to be this will turn out to be $6,610, right? In this way, we can find the nominal GDP. The key is to remember it's today's output measured at today's prices. So let's clear this up, and now let's move on to calculating the real GDP for 1995 and 1996. So let's just erase this up. So okay, so we'll just add this all up again so that we can use this for real GDP now. Let's just fill this table up again quickly. So this is so this was 1200, and this was 5000, this was 600, this was $1, this is $0.5, and this is $2. This is 1300, this is 5500, and this is 700, and this is $1.2. This is $0.6, and this is $2.5. Now I want to calculate real GDP. Let's first recall what real GDP is, right? Now we want to move on to for real GDP. Now remember we said, so let's recall what real GDP is, right? So let's recall. Now real GDP is calculated as today's output measured at constant base year prices. So measured at base year price. So let's just recall how is this different from nominal GDP, right? Today's output measured at base year prices. Remember, nominal GDP was today's output measured at today's prices. So when you're calculating nominal GDP, you use, so whichever year you're calculating it for, you use prices of that year. But when you're calculating real GDP, so you use constant base year prices, right? So output you use for whichever year you want to calculate real GDP of, but it's calculated at constant base year prices. So basically, real GDP at time t is this. What you do is you take each product's quantity in time t, but now instead of multiplying with the price in time t, like we do in the case of nominal GDP, we multiply with the price in the base year and we just sum them up now. Right? So this is how we calculate real GDP. Now let's apply it to this example. Now, obviously, whenever you're calculating real GDP, you need to look at what your base year is. In this case, let's see what the base year is. So we're told to use 1995 as the base year. So this is our base year. So when you're calculating real GDP, what the prices that we're going to use are always going to be this, right? Because whenever calculating real GDP, it's done at base year prices, regardless of whichever year you're calculating it for. So we're going to use this year's prices now. So let's so we're saying let base year be equal to 1995. So now we know the real GDP in 1995. Okay, so let's first find the year 1995 because 1995 is the base year. In the base year, real GDP and nominal GDP are the same. So real GDP 1995 is nominal GDP of 1995, which we just calculated as 4900. Why is this? This is because in the base year, which in this case is 1995, real GDP is equal to nominal GDP. So you don't have to find real GDP for the base year because it's just equal to nominal GDP, and that makes sense because in the base year you're using the base year prices. So in that case, you're multiplying that year's output with its year prices, which is what nominal GDP is. For any other year, you're using that year's quantity, but you're multiplying it with the base year prices. So that's where the difference in nominal GDP comes in years other than the base year. But in the base year, because you're using that same year's prices and quantity, so it's essentially the real GDP is the same as nominal GDP. Now we need to find real GDP for 1996. For 1995, it was simple because it was the base year, it was the same as nominal GDP. So now we're going to calculate real GDP for 1996. Real GDP for 1996. So like we said, when you want to calculate real GDP for 1996, we're going to measure 1996's output at your constant base year prices. So it's going to be the quantity of burgers in 19. So basically, what we are going to do over here is we're going to use, what we're going to do over here is we're going to use these quantities 1300, 500, and 700. So we're going to use these quantities, but we're going to use these prices, base year prices, right? Instead of using prices of 1996, we will use prices of the base year 1995. So basically now, if we look at this, okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. So basically, so we're going to use quantity of 1996, quantity of burgers in 1996, but we're going to use price of burgers in 1995. Similarly, we're going to use quantity of onion rings in 1996, but price of onion rings in 1995. Similarly, we're going to use quantity of milkshakes in 1996, but price of milkshakes in 1995 because it's 1996 output measured at base year prices. So this is going to be 1300 times $1. So I'm using 1995's price plus quantity of onion rings 5500 times price of onion rings $0.5 plus quantity of milkshakes, which is 700 times price of milkshakes in 1995, which is $2. So this will turn out to be 5,450 dollars. So the key here is nominal GDP is calculated for any year as that year's output measured at that year's prices. Real GDP for any year is calculated as that year's output measured at base year prices. And for the base year, nominal GDP and real GDP are the same.